Reports from Capitol Hill today suggest that Supercommittee Democrats are shooting for an even bigger target, slicing $3 trillion from the federal budget, both in spending cuts and $1.3 trillion in new taxes. We're joined now by Texas Republican Congressman and Deputy Whip Kevin Brady. Thanks, Congressman. Thanks so much. Well, initially, reaction from the Speaker was not so good, that, in fact, he was not impressed. He did not think that was, quote, a reasonable number. What's your reaction?
You know, I think more importantly than the number is the composition of this. You know, I think the go big strategy is to go big on tax increases. You know, our revenues are going to bounce back to 19% of the economy. Once this economy gets back in shape, that is about the area where we need to be, certainly if we're going to have a pro-growth economy. So I really think the super committee needs to move away from tax reform. Frankly, they're not qualified, and they don't have enough time to do it right. I think needs to focus on both discretionary income cuts or revenue cuts over the next 10 years, and also look at those out-year numbers on Social Security and Medicare. I really think the market would respond strongly if we really were tackling the drivers of our unsustainable debt.
Understandably, members of the House Ways and Means Committee, you're a top member there, and Dave Camp, the chairman, don't want the super committee messing with taxes because you all say that they don't have the experience, that this is what the Ways and Means Committee does. But there isn't going to be a solution without a tax component, is there?
Well, not necessarily.
You really think you can do enough on the spending cut side?
Yeah,
alone?
I absolutely do. There's no question about it. I think that 1.2, and I really think needs to be higher than that, is a very small amount of spending cuts over the next decade. And if you tie at least that amount of spending cuts with some real reforms on Social Security and Medicare that both parties want, you know, yeah, I think that's the right recipe. And our thought is, look, you know, if they could do tax reform and do it right in this timetable, fine, but frankly, most members of the super committee don't have the knowledge, frankly, or the expertise to do it.
There are reports confirmed by NBC News that Republican members of the super committee are talking about tax reform as a component, and in particular as much as $200 billion in more revenue by broadening the tax base. Does that appeal to you?
Well, it depends what that broadening entails. Obviously, I think right now too many of the committee have been stuck on, you know, energy, taxing U.S. energy companies or corporate jet owners, silly things. If they've got a serious plan that broadens it responsibly, you know, I think members will look at it. But I can tell you in the House, tax increases themselves are a non-starter.
And do you think that we're going to end up trying to find ambiguity and agreement by the Republicans agreeing to some sort of tax reform that includes dynamic scoring, and Democrats saying, well, that's okay, but we're going to call it a tax increase? Agree to disagree, but essentially come up with a compromise?
You know, I hope at the end of the day we end up with the full recommendation, the $1.5 trillion from the committee. I hope that they're responsible cuts. And again, I just think we're not asking a whole lot given this deficit crisis. I really, beyond the numbers this decade, it's Social Security and Medicare, preserving them for the long run. I think it really is what members of Congress, I think the markets are going to look closest at. They ought to focus there.
Do you all in Congress feel more pressure because of Occupy Wall Street, because of the spreading protests and the anger at Washington, and frankly, historic levels of disapproval of members of Congress?
Not from Occupy Wall Street, frankly. It's hard to figure them out. I don't know that they represent any movement necessarily. Back home, I think most lawmakers listening to their neighbors and their communities in this frightening level of debt and this very anemic economy is clearly what worries and angers them most.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you,
Congressman
Andrea.
Brady.
Thanks for having
Thanks for
me.
being with us. And up next,